solving quadratic equations by factoring class. Okay, you may remember that we have seen quadratic expressions and how to factor them in previous topics. Now, remember that an equation requires that it has an equal sign. Okay? The equal sign will help us to find the value of the variable, which is the number we don't know. For this, we are going to use two properties. One is factoring and the other one is the zero product property. Okay? But first, let's remember the standard form of any quadratic equations. Okay? We have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay? Anytime we are going to solve a quadratic equation, it needs to be equal to 0. Okay? If it is not equal to 0, we need to clear or isolate the variables in order to make it equal to 0 and fit into this form. Why? Because the way we solve quadratic equations is by using the zero product property. What does the zero product property says? Okay, what numbers do we need to have in order to have the result of 0? What numbers do we multiply in order to have 0 as our product? We need to have at least one 0. Okay? We can multiply any number by 0 and our result would be 0. Okay? So since we are factorizing our quadratic equation, that means that in order for the factors to be equal to 0, one of them or both must be 0. How do we get to that? We will see. Okay? Please copy the zero product property. It's in your presentation. And now let's see how to solve a quadratic equation. Okay? We have this example in our presentation. The first one is already factorized. We have x minus 5 multiplied by x plus 2 equals 0. Okay? This example is only to use the zero product property. Okay? If we have these two factors and multiplying them will give us a result of 0, that means that at least one of those is equal to 0. Okay? Since we have two options, either this factor equals 0 or this factor equals 0, we are going to have two results. Okay? Always in a quadratic equation, we are going to have two results. So, our two options are either x minus 5 equals 0 or x plus 2 equals 0. And that's how we apply the zero product property, by knowing that one of the factors has to be equal to 0. Now, we isolate the x to get our result. We have x minus 5 equals 0. We isolate the x by removing the negative 5 and passing it to the other side of the equal with the opposite operation, which is an addition. But 5 plus 0 is 5. And this is our first result. Okay, remember we had two options. Now, let's do the same with our other factor. We had x plus 2 equals 0. We isolate the x by moving the number 2 with the opposite operation. 0 minus 2 equals negative 2. Okay, so it's really simple. Now let's do an exercise in which we have to factorize. Example number 2. X squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0. Our first step in solving quadratic equations is always to make sure that it is equal to 0, okay? That it fits this form. In this case, it is equal to 0, so we can continue to the next step, which would be factorizing. Let's find the factorization of x squared plus 8x plus 12 equals 0. Remember how to factorize these type of equations. We place the x on both factors to get our x squared. All of our equation is in positives, so we are going to put the plus sign in both of our factors. And now we have to find two numbers that multiplied would give us a result of 12 and added together will give us a result of 8. Two numbers that multiplied are 12 and added together are 8. We have 6 and 2. 6 plus 2 is 8. 6 times 2 is 12. Okay, now let's apply the zero product property. X plus 6 equals 0 and x plus 2 equals 0. We solve the equations. X equals negative 6 and another x equals negative 2. Okay, we can number our results by placing x1 and x2. Doesn't matter the order, both of them are correct answers, but you need to have both. Okay? Next example is 8x squared plus minus 16x equals 0. Factorizing. Remember, when factoring, we will always first look for a common factor, okay? Common factor of 8 and 16 would be 8. Common factor of x squared and x would be x. And now we write the other factor, which would be 8x squared divided by 8x is x squared minus 2 equals 0. And we're going to apply the zero product property again. We have 8x as one of our factors, and this wasn't squared. X minus 2 equals 0 as another of our factors. Now, since we know here that 8x, they are also factors, but 8 is not 0, because 8 is not equal to 0, then x must be 0 in order for 8x to be 0. Okay? So in our first answer is x equals 0, and the second option is x equals 2. Those are our two answers for this problem. Okay? Remember, we always need to find the factors, and when factoring, we always need to first see if we have a common factor. Okay? That is the simplest way of factoring, and it would give us an answer really quick. Now we have a word problem. in our examples. It says, an architect wishes to design a room for a home addition in which the length is 5 feet longer than the width. If the room needs to be 204 feet squared, find the dimensions. Okay? So, what dimensions does a room have? It has width and length. What information do we have about the width and the length? We have that the length is 5 feet longer than the width. How much is the width? We don't know. So we are going to take it as x. How long is the length? It is the width and 5 feet more. And it gives us the area of the whole room. How do we get the area of a room if we know that it is probably a rectangle? We multiply the width by the length. So we have the width multiplied by the length is equal to 204 feet squared. It is asking us to find the dimensions. Can we find the dimensions if our equation is this way? No. Why? Because it's not equal to 0. So first we need to do this multiplication and then make it equal to 0. We multiply x times x gives us x squared. X times 5 is 5x. And how do we get these to be equal to 0? By moving the 204 to the other side with the opposite operation, which would be a subtraction. And now we have the correct form of the quadratic equation, and we can now factor it to find the values for x. Let's do it. Factoring a trinomial. Replace, there is no common factor. We place x on both of the factors. Now, we have negative number in here and positive in here. That means that we have one negative number and one positive number. Now, let's find two numbers that multiplied will give us a product of negative 204 and added together would give us positive 5. That means that our greatest number is going to be positive. Okay, what two numbers multiplied give us negative 204 and added would give us 5 positive? It would be 12 and 17. Okay, and in order for the addition to give us a result of positive 5, we would have the negative 12 and 17 would be the positive one. Now let's make our factors equal to 0. X minus 12 equals 0, while x plus 17 also equals 0. We isolate the x and we have x equals 12 and x equals negative 17. We have two answers. Which one are we going to use? Is the architect going to build two rooms? No. Why? Because we cannot have a width of -17. Okay? So whenever we are talking about dimensions or anything that cannot be negative, we're going to use only our positive result, which in this case would be 12. Now, they are not asking us the value of x. They are asking us for the dimensions of the room. We know that x equals 12 and the width equals x. So we have a width of 12 feet. And the length is the width plus 5. The length is 17 feet. And that is the answer. Now, that's everything for today's class. I hope everything was clear. Have a nice day. If you have any questions, please log into the Facebook Live Q&A. Bye-bye.